I'm Betsy Mitten, and I'm delighted to introduce you to Chris V of Octopus Connection, who is here with me today. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation about Chris's career and some of the things she's encountered. And I'm sure we'll all come away with a lot of great ideas that we can apply to our own work. But anyway, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure, Betsy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, great. And Chris is in the West and I'm in the Midwest, and I wish I were in the West with you right now. So, well, I just thought I would start by giving people a little bit of your background. And I'm just going to read this so I don't forget anything.
Sure.
But one of the reasons I invited Chris here today is because she has such an interesting background. And so I start by saying, you really have a fascinating background, and you're journey to your current business. And would you say that it's mainly education at this point, or is it?
It is.
Okay, and your membership. So it's just such an interesting path. And I'm really, what I'd like to do is to have these conversations with it could be women or men, but mainly I've been talking to women who have some years of experience behind them. And I think it's always interesting for people to see it doesn't have to be a straight path. So I have, and please correct me, that you have over 20 Skillshare classes, a thriving Facebook group with free painting tutorials. And I have been really fortunate to participate in some of your free painting tutorials, and they're wonderful.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, I love that. And then you have this watercolor membership, and you're an abstract artist. Yeah. Okay. And and I've said this before, but one of the great joys of having some years of experience in life and in your work, kind of under our belts, is that we can sort of look back and see how the dots connect. And sometimes I remember when I first was starting out, I'd think, well, why is this happening? But then maybe 10, 15 years later, I was like, oh, if I hadn't done that, or if that hadn't happened, I would not be where I am today. So
Very true.
I think the path is always kind of fun to hear, and it sort of prepares us for our future adventures too.
Absolutely.
So I guess my first question is, how do you choose your next steps? For example, as you were going along, because I know you've done, some really interesting things, did the next step kind of evolve naturally? Did you do research? Did it just sort of appear? I'm always kind of curious how, because mine is sort of like sailing, like tacking, and then I go as far as I can, and then I catch the wind and do something else, but everybody's different. So I'd love to hear, and I know my newsletter subscribers and audience would love to know kind of how you've chosen your next steps.
Well, I think it's much like you, Betsy, and I think it's a combination of everything you just mentioned. The combination of research, combination of, natural interests, combination of things just kind of landing in my lap, or me seeing something that really excites me and realize, oh my gosh, I need to pursue that more. So I think really in my younger days, I really thought there was some kind of secret sauce that you could find and it would just all magically just connect and work. And I don't think it's ever been that way for anybody. I think it's a matter, it's the journey, it's taking each step, it's keeping your head down and working every day. It's keeping that goal in your mind and just moving toward it. And as you do, opportunities and situations and educational, openings, things just come up, out of the blue as you're going forward. And I think that as much as I do. It's just part of the journey. So yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. I think for next steps, I weigh my options. I weigh my, abilities. I weigh the interest in my audience, and, just try to make an educated decision. And if it doesn't work, I just change my strategy. And so, yeah, there's no real secret.
I know. I often thought when I was younger, and I heard Marie Forleo say, clarity comes from engagement. And sometimes something looks so sounds great. And then I've done it. I'm like, oh, I thought I'd really like to do that, but I just don't really like it.
That's so
And
true.
so that's that kind of engagement. But that kind of leads me also to this idea, because I think we were talking about this before. Um, any of us who've done anything for a while, well, there are two things. One, you talked about consistency.
Mhm,
And the other thing is, though, we all end up kind of at one stage or another, there's a setback.
mhm.
And I don't know anybody who hasn't done anything for an extended period of time. So, I mean, sometimes the setbacks come pretty early, but do you have any particular strategies that help you with setbacks, or how you evaluate them?
That's a really great question. And, setbacks are always going to come. It's not something we really want to think about, but they're, it's part of our lives. And I really, at one point, had some very poor habits and did not, discipline myself to stay positive and so forth. And so I've changed all that, and I've really worked on my attitudes on a daily basis. I try to, keep my affirmations in front of me. I post things on my wall in front of me when I'm working. I think it's a continual maintenance thing. It's not something that, okay, I'm positive now, so I can stop. I think it's something that I have to continually nurture in myself. And positive attitudes have really pulled me forward when I think I would have sunk in some I had a really rough year this last year. And, through it all, because I knew what my goals were and I knew what my intentions were for my life, it kept me going through them. It just kept me moving, even if it was a small thing. As Bonnie Christine says, one thing a day, could get you to your biggest goals. But yeah, I think just keep that action oriented behavior towards what you want. And even if you don't feel like doing it, you'll feel good afterwards. Like you'll feel better. Like, okay, this wasn't a great day. This wasn't a great month, or it wasn't a great year, or whatever, but I kept moving. And it's all going to happen for a reason anyway. And that's another thing. I try to keep a positive attitude towards, things happen for a reason. And like, as you said earlier, down the line, they make more sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I've learned to just keep it going.
yeah. I love that answer. And I I have found when things have not gone my way, which believe me, I've had plenty of those opportunities to learn that later on, the next time something starts to happen like that, I can read it much faster. I'm like, okay, no matter how much I want XYZ to work out, I've seen this pattern before, and I'm gonna like, I know I need to do something differently, because this whatever it was, I can give a couple examples, but this person is never going to really be happy with my work, or this if you get a client who's like, well, this, but I'd like it to look like that, and you're like, I don't know, that was just one example.
Yeah.
But I can, I could, instead of trying to meet those needs, I was able to the next time say, you know what, I do know somebody who works in that style, and you'll be really happy with
There you
that.
go.
And so it wasn't really a loss of a sale. It was just like a really good idea.
Yeah.
Find what
For
they
both of
need.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, find what they need. I mean, there are many other examples, but it does help me recognize the next time something's like, okay, I think this is kind of where we're headed with this.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
you're so right, because you do learn to read things as you go forward, and it makes life so much easier.
yeah. And that's just one of those like experience type things I think that
Yep.
we'll have to go through. And yeah, well, good. No, thanks. That's so helpful. So we both had, years of experience, maybe not necessarily in what we're doing now, but
Yeah.
I came to digital surface design just 2 years ago. I had done uh, textile design, fibers, fiber arts, all by hand before, and then I had taught for a long time. But 2 years ago, I found this great class through Bonnie Christine, and jumped on it. And I have heard, and I'm like well past getting my ARP card, I'm like, for a long time. And periodically, and I will say, I do understand when I was 37, I thought I was really getting old because I could see 40 and I just couldn't imagine, and was starting a new teaching career, but now I'm like way past that. And I don't feel too old to do anything. I just feel really lucky that I have these opportunities. Well,
Amazing.
yeah. But what would you say to somebody who, I don't know, Bonnie has said she had people in her 80s and 70s, and I know there are a lot of people in their 60s and a lot of people in their 50s who they've either been doing other things, they had a business career or they've been raising families or whatever, or maybe they had an art career like I did in a slightly different area. But what do you think? What would you say to people who are thinking of transitioning into a creative career and they're worrying that it might be too late for them?
That's a really, really good point because it's so easy. Imposter syndrome is so prevalent and it doesn't matter in what form it comes. You feel too old, you feel too young. If you don't feel knowledgeable, you feel like maybe you're overqualified. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're going to feel it.
Yeah.
It's ironic, but I feel more like I took immersion 2 years ago also. I was
I think
53. I'm 55 now. And I remember wondering the same thing, should I have done this earlier? Maybe I shouldn't do this. But my heart, my desires, my artistic, inclination was just ready. And after taking the course, and now I've worked on the support team for the course the last 2 years as well. Yeah, I can see all those questions that come in from these people and saying these things. And I can see that everyone is in their spot at the right time when they should be. We're not all supposed to follow the same journey or same, it's not a template. We all are put in different places at different times for different reasons, so I don't think it's ever too late to do anything. I think living is just a continual experience, and we just need to do what we feels right to us. It doesn't matter what society says, they don't have our blueprint for our life. So only we have that, we individually. And I really believe in the individual for that reason, because everybody's story is so unique and so beautiful. And it's so inspiring to hear how differently everyone came to their places,
Yes. And have you noticed that people bring with them things that you might not even think? Some people come from graphic design, some people
Yes.
you were in the fashion world too, weren't you? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
very much
For
so.
15 years.
Yeah, for a long time. And that in ways that you might not even think that it would be helpful,
Yeah.
it does. And it puts
I,
together this wonderful package that's you.
I'm kind of excited about that because the more I study surface pattern design, and this is going to be my year to put my portfolio together and get it out there.
Yeah.
I'm super excited, but I'm so inspired by the students in the immersion course because there's so much joy and excitement of that discovery, that light bulb moment that, oh, I could do this. I could design a wallpaper, a fabric, or any kind of repeat design for anything. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful discovery. And it's, as an artist, I was an artist, my whole life, but I learned to sew very young, 11, 12 years old. And I was always fascinated with the fabrics. It never occurred to me to become a fabric designer until later on, because that wasn't really a thing. I mean, companies hired individuals to do that. It wasn't really an individually pitched thing before. So it wasn't really something that I probably would have done back then anyway. But just rediscovering, that's where the fashion kind of came in, is because I have this love of the patterns, the textiles, the textures. I just love that stuff. I have piles of fabric in my cupboard from projects I just haven't started yet or had leftovers or whatnot, but I can't part with them. They're also precious to me. And so to be now a surface pattern designer is the best. And I kind of lost track of my your original question.
Oh, no, that's okay. This is all really interesting and how fashion but I think what I see is that people can bring whatever they decide
That's
to
what it
do. There will
was.
be some people who aren't in service design watching this, but that it's almost like braiding. We have these strands of ourselves, and fashion maybe
Mhm.
is always going to be one for you. And
It will.
your abstract art, and then you braid it together and you come up with this very unique combination of things. And I also loved to sew as a child, and would, in high school, I don't know what most people are doing, but I'd go to the fabric store, and
Same.
ooh,
We could have hung out together.
yeah, I was just thinking that would have been really fun. And that was something that I've recently, but I did study textiles and fibers at the Art Institute, but that was like fiber is fine art, and not, and so, and I was kind of like, yeah, but I kind of want to keep the dye in the fabric. So that was not what they were about, but I figured it out. But I'm now thinking like, you know what, I love to sew, and that's going to be a part of things going forward for me so it can continue to evolve too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
but I
same
just
here.
think that's so interesting. And that's where you have classes too in fashion illustration, don't you?
I
On
do. I do.
Skillshare.
Well, may I tell a story because I think it
Yes,
ties into
please.
this. I I started out as a realist or a realist artist,
Okay.
and that's all I ever did. And I didn't even like abstract. In fact, I was kind of against abstract, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So, which is a testimony of how life can change a person.
Mhm.
But I just loved the black and white, the definition of things and being able to see things clearly and being able to portray them clearly. And that was I loved doing portraits, which was the hardest thing ever, but I loved the challenge. And then that's why how I got into life drawing in the body form. And simultaneously, my love of textile and fashion sort of melded with that. And I started fashion illustration when I was a teenager.
Oh,
So yeah, so it's been a long love of mine, a long, long, long love. And it's something that is so different than the rest of the arts because it's capturing, it's kind of a combination of the style, perhaps a trend, perhaps, the way the body's standing. That can change from decade to decade. That's part of the style too. So, I mean, you get into all these things with the fashion illustration. But anyway, I digress. But in going
okay.
forward, I went to this exhibit of early modern abstract artists, and I went with someone else because it wasn't my plan to go. But I ended up there and I fell in love with this painting by Mark Rothko. It was just a series of strokes. It was about the size of a huge wall. Like it was a huge, huge painting of just these strokes in different colors. And it was blended so beautifully. And something happened to me looking at that painting. Like I had a moment that was life changing. And I just felt something so deeply. And it hit me that I had been unfair to abstract art. And I began to become more open. Then when COVID hit and I came home from work after the shutdown, I was at home, had just come home from work, and it hit me that there was, here was February or March in 2020, and that there was a pandemic. And I was in the middle of it. And were we all going to die? Or, I mean, I didn't know what was going to
Yeah,
happen.
I think we were all like washing the, packages. It would come in and oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, yes. I was all over that.
yeah, me too.
But what happened is I had a panic attack. And I just started hyperventilating. I rarely have them, but I just lost it for a moment. And I was in my studio. And I remember, I actually don't remember, but all I knew was that I was sitting down a few moments later because I was so out of it. I was just panicking. I grabbed my paper, I grabbed my brush. I had water already in my cup, which I keep on the ready most of the time. And I just started throwing water and paint on the paper. And as I watched it pool, it calmed my nerves. Can you imagine? So I just kept doing it over and over and over again
Yeah.
until I calmed down enough. It took me about 15 minutes. So it wasn't long. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to think about this intelligently. I'm going to watch what people are saying. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And I'm just going to see what happens. I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to, be intelligent and when I walked away and let that dry and I was okay the rest of the time. But when I came back, I had found that I had painted this beautiful abstract. And it was completely instinctive. And I realized right then I need to turn this into a class. Other people need this because anybody can do that. It's instinctively throwing paper on paint.
But what a tremendous thing to share too, because it's truly meditative, I think.
So meditative.
Yeah, and I think that I know I really benefit from meditating in the morning, and I use an app. I don't if I'm just by myself. It's easier, but it's almost like the beginning of my day in well-being. I was listening to a podcast that said, if people think about what makes you have a sense of well-being versus what makes you happy, it makes it easier to kind of do some of those things like, oh, I don't have time to do this or that. But I mean, I can imagine um, doing a painting like that every morning would be really the same kind of feeling as meditating or whatever people do to kind of center themselves, and
Yes.
that you could have that to draw on. I mean, not to make a pun, but I mean, you could have that as a strategy to draw on, just to kind of for relaxing. And then you found a way to really move forward with it where it just, it's a pleasurable thing. It isn't just something
Yeah.
you use in times of really needing to. Um,
Right.
yeah, it just brings you pleasure, and it sounds like really a sense of well-being.
It truly is. And I do teach my abstract classes like that. I have them on Skillshare. I have 5 of them now. I just put out a
Oh,
new
wow.
one.
Oh, yay.
And and they're all a little different. So they all take you in a different direction, but they're all, I stress, this is the only classes where I don't stress on the actual learning experience. I stress on relaxing and letting go and not worrying about the outcome. So it does seem to bring the students a lot of peace, a lot of calm, a place to go, when they have nowhere else. And it's just been a big deal for me to share that.
I think that's such a huge service for people too. And we'll have all of your links to your Skillshare classes and to your website. And I know, and you have a shop and all those kinds of things, so people can take advantage in the best possible way. But I
Sure.
think those paintings are a little bit like if you just take a walk for pleasure. You're painting for pleasure and a sense of
Exactly.
well-being and a creative outlet. So, and that's something you just kind of came across. You couldn't plan it.
That's exactly. And that's what I was
That's
saying. You don't always know what your next step is going to be because, and that's okay. I think that's the beauty and that's the adventure of this life. And it keeps your options open. And I think things come to me now that wouldn't have come to me before because I am open-minded and just ready to see what happens.
Yes, I think that's really important that you had the open mind, you were being open-minded and could imagine the opportunity for that class and sharing that, and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not everybody would have seen that, but I'm glad you did.
I'm glad I did too.
Yeah. So what do you think, and this may be it, I was going to ask you, in your career today, what experiences have had the most impact on you? And I think that maybe that was one of them. Is there anything else that
Yes,
yeah.
actually, I know we talked about Bonnie Christine a few times already, but gosh, she's just a wonderful human being and so encouraging and so just uplifting. And she really seeks to bring that vibe into others' lives too, that
Yeah.
feeling of there's no pressure. Don't come with the pressure, come with just your willingness and your enthusiasm. And I think she has been quite an influence on my life the last 2 years. She came at the perfect time. And I had the immersion course to dive into while all that was going on. Thank goodness that saved me a lot of grief. But yeah, I think that Bonnie Christine and her ability to, how do you say, just put everyone at ease with their learning experience and also be able to share what everyone needs at the same time. It's quite an art.
She's amazing. And I actually was in that was when I took
Isn't
immersion.
that funny? We're in the same class.
Yeah, we were in the same class. And the timing was perfect because I was teaching in-person classes. And I just, they weren't the kind of classes that you could move online. I mean, I provided materials and things. So it was, I really feel it was what centered at me. And I hear myself saying all the time, her Bonnieisms, and one thing a
Yeah.
day, or there's room for you. And that's the other thing. I mean, have you found that there's always room for another creative voice?
Yes. And I think that's one of them I've struggled with the most, honestly, because my inner voice wants to tell me, you know what, there's just this is too saturated already. But
Yeah.
the truth is, is that it's hardly saturated. It's just, it looks like that because we're overwhelmed, but it's not. It's not really like that. And you know, like you said, even if it was saturated, you never know. You might be the person that inspires thousands or hundreds of thousands or more. You never know.
Yeah. And then I remember taking your class through Bonnie's Flourish. You did a class on creating online classes. I
I
did a class
did.
on like botany and art and that
Yes, we
summer
did that the
series.
same year too.
Yeah. And that opportunity to do an online, that was my first,
Same.
yeah, wow. And yours was fabulous. So,
Thank you.
yeah, but, and that I think is a Skillshare class too, like how to create an online class
I
or,
never did. I'm
okay.
considering actually taking that workshop, that live workshop, and which I was terrified to do, by the way. I
Oh,
didn't,
yeah, me
I
too.
always wanted to do one, but I was so scared to do it live. Like, what if I mess up? You know?
Yeah,
And it happens, but that's part of the naturalness. And I think people have accepted that, and it's totally fine. But in the meantime, that live workshop kind of opened up a whole new view of possibilities for me that you can see really changed my whole thing. I just was thinking, I have a class planned for my website that I'd like to put it on, how
yeah,
to teach your own class and focus just on creatives because
okay.
we think differently.
Mhm.
You know, so a lot of technical classes I've taken, I've had to like put it in my own language and like, you know, think about it a different way. But I want to teach it from a perspective where creatives feel like, okay, this person gets me. They understand what struggles I have and why I have a hard time doing this and what I need to know. And so that's the plan.
I think there would be a huge market for that. Yeah, it's just great. And people are used to learning online now, so creatives don't
Yeah.
have to worry like, will people come to online to learn something creative? But you're right,
Yeah.
it is. It's just a different, it's like a delightful kind of brain to live with. But you're right, some of this stuff that is out there is I'm like, okay, well, that's for maybe somebody a little more linear than I am. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So I've had to break through a lot of that stuff and still make it work. And I know others can too. So
Yeah. Well, you do so many interesting things. Do you have a certain place that you go? I know if we like work all the time, we can kind of deplete our well. And
yeah.
do you have a certain kinds of things you like to do to stay inspired?
Yes. I love to go outside. I have a beautiful park nearby, and there's lots of other parks in the area that I love just to walk around, get a little fresh air, hear the birds, and watch the little flowers dance in the wind, you know, just simple things like that. You know, we have a state park nearby too that's gorgeous, and a desert state park. Yeah, I'm in the desert, so it's just gorgeous out there too. So those are some things I go to. I also find that reading magazines and watching films really inspires me. It gets me out of my life and my zone for a little bit, and it gives me a whole new perspective. And I try to target movies that are beautiful or funny or romantic or something that will I know will inspire me. So I'll come away with something, and I do every time. So who knows?
Those are all great ideas and things that I think other people can, like, we can all draw on that with like, oh yeah, I could do this, and that would
For
work out.
sure.
Well, do you find that you plug it in every day, or do you have a certain way? Like, I guess my question would be, like, what is your day like? You know,
Well, most of my days are like in the mornings, I know Bonnie says not to do this, but it's what I do is I check my messages and
yeah,
all my social networks in the morning. Because if there's anything important, I'm always worried, did I miss something? Is there something there that I needed to pay attention to for the day? So I always like, and then it clears my mind. I feel like I have a clean slate. And then I start in on projects, blog posts. Um, I'm preparing for a live painting session for my membership that I have. I have a watercolor membership, and we're having a live session tomorrow. So today I'm getting all of that lined up and preparing for that. So it kind of depends on what I've got coming up too. I just finished creating a course for a school for
wow,
kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a huge project. It took me
Yeah.
several months. But I just finished that. So that was a part of my day for a long time.
Yeah.
And that went very well. It was a fashion illustration course,
Oh, wow,
ironically,
how fun.
for
Yeah.
kids. So
Yeah.
that was super fun. So yeah, it depends on the projects I have, but mostly I kind of get my slate cleared in the morning. I take a break, eat, have breakfast, walk around the park or whatever. I do that about every few times a week, and do some yoga, and then get into my day, into my projects, and try and stay productive, try and watch the time, try and make sure I'm not getting off the path and, scrolling for days.
Yeah. No, it's
That can
great.
happen.
Yeah. And everybody has a different way. Like some people are, Daniel Pink has written this book called when people when it's great to do, I don't know, creative work versus administrative versus analytical. And it was a
Yeah.
really interesting read, but I'm best in the morning. So regardless of what it is, my number one thing has to happen then. And I'm the same way. Like I limit my time, but I just want to make sure I don't have a message back from somebody where something that needs, but I do try to really limit my time on the,
Yeah,
yeah,
same. Because it can get a little bogged down.
yeah.
I definitely want to keep my spirit light. I also, like I said earlier, really pay attention to what I engage in.
Oh,
I try not to watch movies that are heavy, scary, sad. It's going to happen once in a while, but I try not to, because then it gets in my spirit and my creative juices get heavy.
yeah,
So
that makes sense. It's kind of like not eating too much junk food,
yeah,
just,
you're right. You're right. That brain food really works. And same with, the places I go to. I try to go to inspiring places. I try to go to places where, I feel like I'm going to get refreshed. They're not going to bring me down, or there's not going to be a bunch of people there that are, you know, negative or
yeah, no, because yeah, exactly. Right. I think we have to kind of protect our input. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great way to put it.
So, and
Okay.
it's easy sometimes to get to not, but it's, as long as we're kind of aware, but
Yeah.
yeah, those are all such great ideas. You mentioned your membership, and I'd love for you just to say a little bit about it
I
because
would
it's,
love to.
yeah,
Yeah.
great.
So I took Try with Stu McLaren last year. He's
Okay.
about to actually open that again for anyone that's
Yeah.
interested out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's called the Membership Experience now, and he's the guru. He's really, really good at teaching people how to build memberships. And he taught Bonnie, he taught Emily Jeffords, he taught, most of the big memberships you see, he's been the one to teach them. And he really gets in depth with how to put all that together, how to structure it, like what do you need in there, what do people need to learn. And so I took that and I started a watercolor membership, and I added an entire resource library of things that people need to know as new painters,
Oh,
things about brushes, techniques, and I'm still building that, but it's growing little by little. And then I have techniques on how to use color, how to draw, so drawing tips, and then of course the watercolor techniques and how to meld it all together to make a beautiful painting. So we have live sessions, we have guest speakers, of which you are going to be one coming up.
that was
And
fun.
it was. And uh there's something else I'm forgetting. Oh, I have like little training videos and technique, like warm-ups and things like that. So lots of fun things in there.
And when does your membership open up?
I'm going to be opening it up in May.
Okay, great. So
But if people want to go to the website, they can get on the wait list now.
and what's, just so everybody, we're going to say it and then we're going to put it in print, but you want to say the name of your
Oh,
website?
of course. It's
Yeah.
called Mastering the Waters.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. And would they go though to Octopus Connection to
Yes.
find it? Okay.
Yes. Octopus Connection will lead to, I have a learning section where
Okay.
you can access my Skillshare classes, my live painting sessions, and then also the membership.
That sounds wonderful. Well, down the road, the whole membership idea is very appealing. And I have been kind of watching people who are doing that. It's not in my plan this year, but I just was so impressed when I saw that you started one and how well
Oh,
it's
thank you.
going, and it's just, but and along that same line about things that are going, just that you're doing right now, is there something that you're excited about that you're doing right now, or multiple things, or something you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm really excited about building my surface design portfolio.
Yep.
I'm really excited about the new course I want to build on teaching for creatives. And I'm just excited about building a whole new type of teaching channel, because the education space, ironically, became my mainstay. And I never saw that coming. But, when I was in the corporate world, I was always the one to ask to train
Interesting.
every single
So
time.
it's always there. That thread of
It's funny how the obvious just escapes you,
Mhm. Yeah.
a lot. But yeah, it didn't hit me until after a year I was teaching. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was natural all the time. And I absolutely love it. So
Yeah. Well, you're so great at it. So that worked out really well. So yeah, my
thank
first
you.
job after college was like a management trainee as a training director of all things. But it was in business, and I was like, well, this isn't really what I want to do. But it was the teaching, but just not in that, you know,
Sure. In
like,
that
yeah, do we
capacity.
have all
Yeah,
the slides for the presentation kind of thing, which is a really great job for people to have. But that
it
was,
is.
I needed a little more of a, open field for
I
creativity.
totally understand.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, isn't that funny? That was my very first job. And I didn't study teaching in undergrad, but
Yeah,
anyway,
sometimes it's just natural.
yeah, it just comes. And those are a lot of great things to be looking forward to. Is there anything about that you would want to share about your process? I mean, is there like your process of, let's say, coming up with a class?
Uh,
I think
yeah,
people
that's an interesting one.
they love behind the scenes and will let you do this. And I know you're super pressed for time and you've been incredibly generous with it.
Oh no,
But I
it's totally fine.
love
I always
people.
have time for you, Betsy.
I hope we get to meet in person sometime. All these
I do
people
too.
who I feel like they're friends and I know them, but I'm like, oh, I've never been within, like, 1,000 miles of this person.
It's
So
ironic, right?
I had to think about how far is Nevada from Chicago. But anyway, so if anything you'd like to share, I think people would be interested in hearing about your process.
Absolutely. So my process for art or education or just working or
Whichever one you feel most, you'd like to share. We're
I think it's important to really look at yourself as an individual when you're trying to figure out your process. So I do that. I look at my strengths, I look at my weaknesses, and then I build a process that works for me, and it evolves with me as I change, as my needs change, as I get older, things change, and you get aware of different things. And so I've really built a practice for myself for my brand and for my actual work and for my person that fits my time slots, like we were talking about earlier, that fits my personality. I'm in the process of rebranding my website because in my another life I had quite a bit of graphic design education, and and so I am going very slowly and through a process of trying to relearn my brand, like not relearn, but reinvent. Like, what is it today? Like my logo is about 7 years old, and I thought it was time for a refresh, and things have really need an update. So I'm slightly changing the colors. I've created a new logo. I am in the process of all new brand photography. And in that process, speaking of, I am rediscovering what's important to me. I am reconnecting with the things that ground me. And really, since I've discovered this abstract direction, my whole premise has been to use the art to enrich my life and others' lives. It's so therapeutic. It's a shame not to capitalize on that in some way. And really, my gosh, we all need more calm in our lives.
I'll say.
And so my whole brand direction is calm, the calm of the desert, the calm of art, the calm of the whole thing. And I'm loving it because it's giving me back something that I need.
I think that's so beautiful because it's a reflection of you, a wonderful, really needed thing in our world today. And it really speaks to this whole thing of well-being.
Yes.
And it's a mission that I'm sure is very, well, it comes from you and is something that is, when you think about that, it's like, all the little tasks you're doing are going towards something that you believe in your heart is really important. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
we will absolutely look forward to your rebrand. Well, your website now is beautiful, but your rebrand and all the
Thank
things
you.
you do. And is there any advice or guidance you feel you would want to pass on that you've learned from your, you know?
Yes, right off the top of my head, what comes to me is that uh, advice. Okay, so one of the things I wish I'd learned earlier would save me so much time and energy, and it would have given me more confidence too, is that all the free workshops that are out there are great, and I learn a lot from them. However, I've learned over time that to follow every piece of advice to a T, it just runs me in all these different directions. And I might miss my own direction. Those people got there by listening to themselves and by doing things their way. And that's exactly what I realized I need to do. And I can take the advice, I can put it on the shelf and kind of shuffle it around and kind of reinterpret it into my own language, if you will. I believe every human being has their own way of thinking, their own way of processing, their own way of working through things. And so I learned to take that information and then see how I can fit it into who I am. And had I learned that earlier, I think I would be a lot further now. So I want everyone to know that they should listen to their gut. They should follow and use common sense, like the things that they know about themselves. You can get out of your comfort zone, which I totally condone that. Definitely get out of your comfort zone. That's uncomfortable, but there's some inherent things about yourself that you don't really want to go against. So
That is such great advice, and it's such great guidance. And it's one of those things that, yeah, I think if I had known that maybe a few decades ago, well, quite a few decades ago, and by living, you can start to reflect and say, okay, the time I didn't listen to that voice, boy, was that a mistake, and I regretted it. And
yeah,
nothing
that's very true.
tragic, but it was like, I knew in my gut I didn't want to do that, like take that job or whatever it was. I just talked myself into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just one example, but
That's a good one. And in doing that, it's okay. It's a learning experience. And in doing that, then you learn where the lines are. And I think people are afraid to make mistakes, but honestly, they're your best bet to learn anything worthwhile.
oh yeah, absolutely. What is that saying? You either learn or you either succeed or you learn.
That's
It's
it.
like, yeah. And
yeah, I love that
boy,
one.
have I learned a lot over my years, but then,
But that's the good thing. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think as a mature person, that's what makes us, it gives us an advantage.
I just feel like all that that same thing you said earlier, like I couldn't have done this any sooner because I needed all that life experience. And this was the perfect time for me to do the digital. And even, I mean, I'm really loving talking to people like you and different people who have had similar, different experiences, but experiences over time to draw on.
Yeah.
So, and I know everybody will love hearing about your life and your work and your art. So yeah. Oh no. And oh yes. Thank you so much, Chris, for
Oh my gosh, it was my
taking
pleasure.
this time. And I will have a slide at the beginning and the end of this interview so people can grab your contact information and follow up. And I know you're on Instagram, you've got your website, your membership, and so many good things. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, it's my absolute pleasure, Betsy. It's always great to hang out with you and so fun to chat with you today.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.